Dongrang has distorted and has revealed to be the final trial that the damned dozen would need to face in order to get the golden bow. Dongrang has a memory when he visited District 19, believing that he'll probably die soon in such a peaceful place, when he looked at a bull that passed him by. Dongrang didn't take this well. He found this a bad joke. He spoke of Dongbik being right. That bull didn't recognize him. He might be filled with husks right now, but he knows he's almost there soon. He'll make his own technology to fill himself up. He'll gather a team again, hire another secretary. There will be much to do. So he didn't think that he'd need that bull anymore. So he killed him. The last thing that reminded him of his more ethical past, which, like that bull, was now dead. Later on, Alfonso asked him how long he's going to keep her waiting. This was when Dongrang was reminded of something he left in his hometown, something that would result in an angry mob if it was witnessed by Hindus. Regardless, he realized that the present is what he should be thinking about, what he'd gain from that point onwards instead of what he left behind. Alfonso understood that anyone can have a moment of foolishness, asking if he has a way to generate an endless stream of tears. Dongrang has tried a number of ways, torturing people, then curing them using tears, then torturing them again. Unfortunately, this wastes a portion of tears extracted. Alfonso agrees, which is why they're importing footage from a variety of wings and backstreet syndicates. Sadly, Dongrang noticed that they're asking for higher prices for the audiovisual feed. Other factions are starting to notice that they're in need of it, even if they don't know the exact purpose. The employee then sounded as deranged as he actually was. He sounded masochistic, asking if they could break a finger. Dongrang, seeing that the point was proven, as her subordinate tied to a chair seems to have lost it too. Likely someone that displeased her too much or looks like a potential rival. Then we see the application of the glass window that was used to make the tearful thing cry. He said that he shouldn't close his eyes. And then we get to the present where it's clear that Dongrang is a more stable kind of distortion, capable of communication. He then spoke of Carmen, telling her that's not exactly the case. The path didn't end. He can finally see where he should go. Yisang asked if after coming such a long way around, has he at last returned to this path? It's unclear who he was asking. When he asked, did they see? He said that when he looked into the eye, he didn't feel the sympathy that he used to feel anymore. Instead, did she see that? A pale imitation of the glass window made by leeching off it. Now a flag that raised the esteem of K-Corp's singularity high. Yisang could see it as well. Yongji had left. Dongbik had returned to the bed of flowers. Then the sun in the fathom of Yigyo rose, and he said, all that's left is a parasitic mutation of Yongji's glass window, a shoddy copy of it that didn't manage to be anything. what uses technology that can't change the world, so he wants him to stop caring that like he has. Let it cry for their agony and sorrow in their stead. Then, now that he is completely honest about himself, that he's a complete sociopath, that recognizes himself as such, he not only reverted to a human form, but manifested the Farm Watch EGO, a farmer outfit with cow horns. While it is possible to revert a distortion to human, this is the first time where EGO is manifested in the process. And as it reveals in the Distortion Detective, those that manifest EGO, they can't distort. The fight wasn't over. They had a similar but different battle to Dongbig's Spicebush EGO. And as Filthy Frank would put it, "Welcome to the rice fields!" Okay, I'll stop there. Thought I'd give a more standardized version of that. It wouldn't feel right if I gave you the full, uncensored version. Armed with a deceptively crude-looking scythe, and a focus towards slowing down his enemies, his trees, however, heal. Okay, I'll save the rest for the abnormality lore video. Even though he's more a high-threat enemy. During this fight, it's clear that Dongrang no longer feels pity for his test subjects, even if his technology isn't recognized, even when he thinks of the yellow calf in his hometown. He isn't sad anymore. He saw the past as useless. He would burn us all. He rushed at Yisang, blocking his attack. Is what Yisang did. Seeing the attacker's efforts as useless, more nuisance than anything, as his weapon bounced off the defender's weapon, the bitter chuckle hid a cold fury. Later on in the battle, he made it clear that he wanted to erase all of the past. He'll have no business with them once Yisang is gone. He was quite displeased, and yet, why do they keep interrupting? He was preparing a powerful attack. The defender drove their weapon into Dongrang while he was otherwise distracted, and the attack didn't come through. He saw where they stood, deciding to get rid of them all along with Yisang. Basically, his original plan was, his quarrel was with Yisang, not them. If they defended him, it will be with them as well. To be rid of them and his ideal. As he was even more beaten up, he didn't think that he should be wasting time like that. A sudden realization made him stop in his place and look up at the stars in the sky. He was losing out. For each second, the tearful thing wasn't crying. I think the production is the least of your worries. Well, right now, certainly. You can't do that if you're dead. Even so, he saw the opportunities and time to change the world were scattering. He glared at them with bloodshot eyes, believing Yisang as the only one that needs to go for that to be over. Then there was a scripted event where only Yisang can defend against Dongrang. He insisted that he mark the end for Dongrang, seeing it as the most ideal. He was successful, pleading with Dongrang to end this now. Dongrang asked him, how could he? In the end, someone had to cry tears. Yi Sang pulled the weapon lodged it into him. Dongrang lodged it deeper inside, telling Yi Sang to end it that way. Then we get back to the glass window near the tearful thing. He was certain that he left. He felt that he's still inside the white square. All things reduced to mere dots, incapable of stimulating or inspiring, asking if he'll follow that meaningless walk, wandering his whole life. Seeing them as chickens whose wings are cut perpetually. Sinclair noticing that Yi Sang doesn't look so good psychologically. Hong Lu told Dante that, even though he acted out Yongji's words, it gave him a thought. The letters Yi Sang wrote. They were meant for Sang Yi, his mirror self, along with all people that he had ties with in the past, those he knew in the present, and those he might meet in the future. Dante understood that included them. Hong Lu understood that he might have been calling for help all along. Dante asked Yi Sang what was on his mind before he left Encore. When Yi Sang parted with Gubo, stars lost their shine and darkness filled the air. He felt as if he was crippled. Yet, he thought that there might be a place that will allow him to live on, even with no wings and legs limping. It was a thin thread of hope, but he held on to that possibility. Then we saw Dongbik as she was before she was killed when they saw the mirror. She thought that she was seeing what she didn't have. That's why they seemed so far. Why she could only look. Why she settled for that reality. Like how she dreamed of stars as she watched fireworks. But the mirror showed possibilities. She didn't have to envy the mirrored images. What she saw were possibilities that were held in it. He held them all along, the wings to make this possibility a reality. That's what she wanted to tell him. Then we see a flashback of Yi Sang when he first met Faust, who referred to him as the first sinner. That she was waiting for him, with Mephistopheles behind her, offering to help him to recover his torn and broken wings and something else for joining Limbus Company. Then Sang Yi appeared. Yi Sang didn't think that he had the talent to pick up shattered pieces, although the sparkling eyes weren't feigned. Sang Yi understood that their tortuous path would circle around misery. What they thought were bonds will inevitably be lost, and precious things will scatter into shards that stab his soft heart. Yi Sang was fully aware. It's why all things have a worth that doesn't last. Dante asks Yi Sang why he created the mirror. Yi Sang didn't make technology to hold any value in it, as he couldn't return to the past. Simply, he's reminded of when Yi Sang said the mirror that he's holding, Yi Sang called Yonism. Sang Yi understood that it's a product of grinding something, scraping even the mind to polish it. Sang Yi saw all versions of Yi Sang as dedicated to research. Yi Sang thought that he'd lost his wings, that he couldn't have them. He thought that he'd been clinging to research, pathetically stroking the joins where wings used to be. But he believes he now knows the mirror's true name, Yearnism, the bridge that connects hearts together. He made the mirror because he wished to keep on living and flapping and fluttering, to soar into the air once more, even if he fell afterwards. seeing that one day despair would arrive for certain, the reason why life must go on, as far as it can. It mattered not if he had wings. Sang Yi saw all Yi Sangs as having outstanding talent as well as being ignorant. All had wings, but only one could fly. The Yi Sang in the mirror must be the opposite of the Yi Sang outside. But they're quite like each other as well. He saw radiant and magnificent wings. His wings and also Yi Sang's by extension. A mirror is a reflection of the self. If he sees it on Sang Yi, it's on Yi Sang as well, telling him to kick off the ground and flutter his wings. This was all Yi Sang wished for. Just once more, he wished to fly, he said as wings were starting to appear behind him. Then they appeared in the ruined lab. Yi Sang readied his finisher. At first glance, it looks like his Zayin Egio, but wings made of crystals appeared when he stabbed Dongrang. The shattering Dongrang was straining to speak. He said, "Yi Sang." And then he remembered that spring day. Stars rose in their eyes. They sparkled as brightly as his wings. He always yearned to escape the shadows of the League. In the end, the same shadow embraced him after everything. Then Dongrang died. And to be honest, after his deceit, him selling out the League for a position in K-Corp, betraying himself even, he had it coming. After some time passed, and that building went back to normal, it was clear that with Dongrang's death, their contract with him was rendered null and void. They needed another way to get the golden bar, and unfortunately that way was involving Alfonso. She saw it as consequently not all bad, not all good either. Dong Bik, the leader of the TLA, was dead. It won't be a matter of if, but when that organization collapses. As for the remaining problems, she has a suggestion of how to deal with them. Well, she might be a functional psychopath, one that has no problems with showing horrors to the tearful thing, but she has some standards. Where everything that happened in K-Corp that single day was, single-handedly caused by a mentally unstable and rebellious employee named Dongrang. Well, she's not completely wrong. He disregarded protocol, and if it weren't for the fact that he was working for K-Corp, Dong Bik might have considered that wing a lesser target. He apparently had a scheme to unfairly claim personal gains and power within that firm, asking if they agreed. Alfonso, you overestimate his ambitions. It wasn't about personal power. It was about something more personal. Ishmael was asking if she was okay with that cover-up story. He was her employee, even though he may have opposed them. She did say her goodbyes with him earlier, not impressed by him trying to avoid talking with her. She then talked to Dante, the manager of Limbus company, who seemed unassertive to her, advising that if they want to be a leader, they'd best remember to nip any rising problem in its bud. The faster, the better. Dante was clearly at this corporate intrigue. They saw through her words and understood that she was no paragon of virtue, even by the city standards. All this ill feeling could be summed up in the response, "Go yourself." Although Dante's way of saying it was less profane. Dante was angered by this. They suspected her of hiring Shi Association's assassins to silence Shireen. Well, she had the motive, and she could certainly afford the services of those above Section 5. Faust wisely decided not to give her a full translation and basically told her that they understood. Alfonso's initial impression was that he was they were half-wit, to be more precise. But they weren't put in charge for no reason. They were practically conscripted into the role. She didn't know how things got complicated enough for them to get involved with their wing's singularity, but the tearful thing was K-Corp's singularity itself, and a confidential detail that's something that they can't allow to be known. Well, Dongrang wanted to use the concept incinerator to erase that singularity, so they needed to stop her from doing that. Faust then stated that Limbus Company doesn't give away confidential information gained during investigation. If she'd like, they'd arrange a contract to... Alfonso found that laughable. Was she seriously offering that after seeing a contract they signed turn into worthless paper stacks? She couldn't let a piece of paper bind her down. She basically said, if they consent to their memories of the singularity being erased, they can leave with the golden bar. Ryoshu was not happy with this. Not about this at all. She said sink, or roughly translated, she'd slice her neck. Or tamper with her memories and she'll cut her to bits. Virgilius understood that this might happen, so he saw fit to intervene, as this was clearly a situation that Dante would be unable to handle. He agreed that they'd follow her method, although Ryoshu thought that he was a piece of... She knew it would be unwise to provoke a color fixer, and he hasn't even demonstrated his full power. Specifically his blood-based EGO that he demonstrated towards the end of Leviathan. Alfonso felt that it'd be fine to say what she was going to say, as they weren't going to remember it at all. She wanted to correct one thing, and this was when Virgilius was out of earshot. What they saw wasn't the actual tearful thing. It was a child's entity. Ugh, that was sick of her. Removing one of its eyes to make their HP ampules. Apparently they didn't want to leave such a precious asset in the hands of some researcher with no real credentials. Ooh, talk about having no respect for the dead. I mean, even Dongrang didn't deserve that. Apparently it would sadden her if they believed that fiddly thing was the pride of their wing. Not that they'll have a chance to think about it. Despite Ryoshu's objection to this, they followed the unfriendly instructions of people that looked like K-Corp high-ranked staff and fixers. They were put through the memory wipe procedure, erasing every recollection of the tearful thing from their minds. Yes. The damned dozen had their memories of the tearful thing scrubbed. And then they left. Alfonso told them to look forward to how the tears would be used in the future. They remembered something in that lab. They saw it, but they had no recollection of what it was, how the tears were collected, or how the HP bullets were made. Back on Mephistopheles, Dante asked Yi-Sang about something. Where did he want to fly? Yi-Sang was content with the feeling that it would give, so no particular direction. Dante asked, what about now? Yi-Sang had no comments about that. Then it was revealed that what they didn't notice about Dante is that for some reason, the memory wipe didn't work on them. He questioned if they could recover the memories of the damned dozen as well, like they could rewind injuries. They considered this, but they were unsure how they could do that, or if it was possible. But this knowledge was valuable. The knowledge about K-Corp Singularity, how it was made, and what they did to get it. So they'd keep quiet about this, at least until it was needed. It could provide some valuable leverage. Then we got back to Yi Sang, who wanted to say that he plans to face what he has left, those being the mistakes the League of Nine had left, and the tasks left for him, to resist as much as he can, if needed. No longer will he bend as the wind blowed. He wouldn't let it sway him or strike him down. As in what led to him to Encore, where he would... Yes, he was dead there, without resistance by Gubo, rather than be slantwise and seep. He intends to walk where he plans to go, asking Dante if they'll aid him with this. Dante would. It was clear that the memory wipe didn't gnaw away at the determination that had firmly taken root in their hearts. Then they asked themselves where their determination comes from. How much must they remember and witness? Thinking about this, they looked at Virgilius, who was on the other side, who said said that because it would be one of the manager's duties to remember and witness all that. Dante thought that he heard what they said. And then Faust told Virgilius that they were asking if he heard what they said. The usual ticks weren't heard, so he had no way to know that anything was said. Of course they couldn't hear their words. It was just idle talk. The look on their face seemed to warrant it. Meanwhile, at the Church of Stanley Kubrick, or Anthony Burgess, depending on who you're thinking of regarding A Clockwork Orange, either the director of the movie or the writer of the source material. Alfonso said, "May the meaning of those ceaseless tears be effervescence. Your wish, as well as ours, are being realized to the best of our abilities as always." Then another letter was written. "Have you been well? Whenever I look at the mirror, I find myself greeting it. It was said that a greeting is only natural when it is mutually exchanged. I didn't mind the one-sidedness, as I believed that it would be conveyed someday. I decided that from now on I'd be no longer stopped in place, even if all would ultimately remain unchanging. I too shan't change either. I'll have no need to be overly concerned for you. I now have new companions by my side, although I can't be sure what they will think of this. I intend to consider them as such. To close off, allow me one final remark. May they all keep company with peace throughout their lives. Yours sincerely, Yi Sang." The damned dozen have another golden bower in their possession, although they're still not done. That can wait for another day, as while Yi Sang was using a small mirror device, the others were going about their business, and part of that involved the looking forward to the next time they ate out, viewing a menu. Dante was waiting outside. Well, they didn't need to eat, so they stepped out of the restaurant to briefly catch some fresh air, while the others were eating. They noted that they were sure serious about eating, and were amazed that they can look so happy while eating out. Then Damien appeared, surprising Dante, recognizing him, not even noticing him there. Asking how long he was there, Damien told them that he'd come to see him again, asking why people can't settle for just looking. It should be enough to simply admire it, smell the scent, and enjoy the moment. But they nurture greed and obsession as they contain it in their sight, eating themselves away. The mirror, too. It was first created for simple enjoyment. It could be compared to a bag of chips with hundreds of flavors, for example. Or another example with the Harry Potter books is the every flavor beans. But then someone came up with an idea. What if there was a way to reach into that possibly infinite bag of chips and take what they don't have? What if all of them could have all the flavors that way? That sounds like the mirror's ability to extract alternates from other worlds and EGO. It wouldn't be considered theft, although apparently it's stealing from Damien. Dante wasn't sure what to think of this. Countless stars in the sky, but they aren't all the same. If someone else saw them, there might have been nothing more than dim lumps of light, and hung it on a high enough place for everyone to see, expelling the dark. All the people would rejoice. Here's a question. What would become of him who has been robbed by him, and the star that's now forced to illuminate the dark forevermore? This confused Dante. Damien sees the mirror that the damned dozen used as not much different. It's such a cruel piece of technology, telling Dante to take time to answer, to draw him a sheep later. Dante might not remember it now, but they promised to. And just as Dante was about to say something, Damien vanished, leaving only a hint of loneliness. Nowhere to be seen, as if he returned to where he belonged. They couldn't even remember what they were trying to remember. Later on, they were sitting down in Mephistopheles. The minute hand that looked ever static moved. This was likely a reference to the doomsday clock, which showed the likelihood of calamity, how close the destruction of everything is to doomsday. But the question was, what was doomsday in this setting? It's not nuclear-based. That much is certain. But considering that there is such a thing in that world as kaiju-sized abnormalities, that hell exists. I mean, there was a wing that generated power by tapping into it. That was destroyed by White Knight. And the fact that the distortion phenomenon exists. It's a distinct possibility, and the full extent of what this doomsday is in the Project Moon universe, it'll be some time before we find out for sure. Let's go over the references to the Divine Comedy. The references in this one applies to the Seventh Circle, the Circle of Violence, the domain of the murderers, the war makers, and tyrants. Although in this ring, the part that applies to this is the Minotaur, a bull-like being, what Dante and Virgil had to navigate past to get to the Sixth Circle, as one of the abnormalities in this chapter was the Brazen Bull, one that had boiling blood, which is what the Circle of Violence had in its abundance. Specifically, the ring that was a part of this circle. Those that dwelled within there are Attila the Hun, Scourge of God, and in some versions of the Divine Comedy, Alexander the Great. There are also a few references to the source material of what Yi Sang wrote, specifically from The Wings, where there are a few references to taxidermied moments. In fact, this short story started with the question, have you seen, or rather ever seen... Okay, let's start again. Have you ever seen a stuffed genius? And as for the blue pills, they're not just a possible Matrix reference. They're what the main character's wife forces on him to keep him from escaping. Which, in this case of the game's context, is Gubo to stop him from seeing the way out. As for that part where Sang Yi suggested to eat a load of them at once, that was a reference to the main character eating a load of them at once, thinking that it was aspirin. As for the wings that sprout out during Yi Sang's finisher of Dongrang, that's a reference to the finishing line of that short story. Wings, spread out again! Fly, fly! Let me fly once more! Let me fly just once more! Okay, what can we piece together with Chapter 4? The Outreach is a place beyond the outskirts, where there's less of the refuse of the city dumped by the head as impurities, and it was there that the stars could be clearly seen, and apparently there were beings who could grant wishes. It's unclear if they're granting wishes not knowing how adverse it might be for the one making them, or if they're malevolent beings that twist the wish into something that can cause suffering to the one that makes that wish, like with the Jinn from the Wishmaster series. But one such encounter allowed Stephanette to make K-Corp possible. She used more ethical means of extracting tears by reading stories to the tearful thing, as the boy was after making a wish that made him what he was. But when Stephanette died, her successor showed the tearful thing horrific scenes. At first it was torturing those that fell out of favour with her, but she went to such lengths as importing footage from other wings and even syndicates, eventually leading to the glass window made by Dongrang, a corruption of Young Ji's work. While Yi Sang's mirror was more of a compliment, this was an insult. And thankfully Dante was immune to the memory wiping, as that information could help out in the long run. I can think of one group that might. An Arufi Association affiliated fixer office that might need help to get started again, in exchange for something that Limbus company needs. One with a screen for a head, and so might also relate to Dante. As for the original League of Nine, Dongrang and Dongbig, they're definitely dead. Gubo was serving NCorp as part of their League of Nine. Yi Sang is still with Limbus Company. While the other 5 are unaccounted for, Youngji certainly has a distinct appearance, most likely one with at least a prosthetic head. The head certainly can't be confused for human, as per the AI Ethics Amendment. As for the NCorp League of Nine, only Gubo and Azia are known. The other 7 are either not recruited or not showing their faces yet. Although there are some that were deported back to District 19, and T-Corp seized what they could. I suspect we'll find out the answers eventually, although there was that brother of Honglu. But for now, it's time to keep moving towards the next destination for the Damned Dozen. As for Demien, he seems to have a history with Dante, having met them before their encounter under Ka. He seemed more than he was, and based on the cryptic sentences, implies that he has some ties to the modified mirror device, although we can't know for sure to what extent. And while the distortion detective shows that those that are distorted can revert back to being human, with some outside help, Dongrang was the first time that someone who was distorted has not only reverted back to human, but has manifested EGO. And that was when he was honest with himself regarding being a sociopath and a terrible human. As what's next, the Damned doesn't have an ally in Dante, not just with their immunity to memory wiping. They've demonstrated the ability to see the near future, such as their battle against the Brazen Bull just before it happened, likely due to the golden bars in their possession. What else would Dante be capable of? As the golden bars keep getting collected. Whatever the case, that's up to whoever does the writing. All we can do is wait. Well, this is a long one. Hopefully, Chapter 4.5 will be shorter. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!